New year. Let me just ask you, how many of you are freshmen? Raise your hand if you're freshmen. Okay, how many are sophomores? How many are juniors? Okay, and how many are seniors? Okay, so great. It's mostly a junior-senior crowd here today. And now I have one more question. How many of you have played in the NFL? No? No? Oh, there we go. We got one here. How many of you have been MVP in the NFL? Right here. So we're really grateful to have Eric Hipple, class of 1980 from the Huntsman School of Business, here with us today. I can tell you it's been a great pleasure for me to get acquainted with Eric. I was a little before Eric's time. You wouldn't know that just looking at our respective ages that I was older than Eric, but it's true. Eric is a member of the All-Century Aggie team, and he knows something about winning seasons in Aggie football, and we're going to restore that again. Is that right? Yeah, that's exactly right. It's not often that you have an opportunity to meet somebody like Eric, and in particular because this isn't a guy who scored touchdowns without a stain on his jersey. This is a guy who got knocked down over and over and over again and kept getting back up and going back in. That's what he's famous for as a football player, and that's what his life is famous for. Eric suffered a tragic death of his son in the year 2000 of suicide, and frankly, it threw him for a loop, and he himself found himself battling depression, and he's written a book about that called Real Men Do Cry. I've read that book, and I highly recommend it to you. It was inspirational to me. I know it'll be inspirational to you. Let me just say that what I've learned in my 60 years of life is that nobody goes through life without getting hit, and getting hit hard at some time or another. It's going to happen to each of you in this room. You won't know what it's going to be. It could be finances. It could be relationship issues. It could be issues with your children or your spouses, your parents. But every one of us in this life gets hit and gets hit hard. The question is not, are you going to get knocked down? The question is, are you going to get back up? And to me, Eric Hipple is a great model, a great example, because here's a man who has been hit really, really hard, and he's gotten back up, and he's decided to dedicate his life to helping other people know how to get back up. So will you join me in recognizing and welcoming Eric Hipple?
Thank you. That's what's called technical difficulties. Let me put this back on real quick. Woo, there we go. Well, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it. I've got to ask you a question. You guys know where Lund Hall is, right? Do you know that was a football dorm when I was here? Yeah. They housed the whole football team inside that dorm. And I'm really surprised it's still standing. Because we were kind of a bunch of crazy guys and stuff, and putting a bunch of guys like that together, we're almost like a fraternity, except for we didn't have the discipline, I guess, of a fraternity. How's that sound? But it was some really interesting times. In fact, when I was walking around here yesterday, some of the waves of nostalgia kind of came back, and I was able to walk, across the campus. I went out to the quad and walked down to the field and walking back again. And I walked out to the quad and I looked over, and there's Lund Hall. I'm looking at it, and there's the business building, and I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, I graduated in business administration, and I'm thinking, why did I do that? Because when I entered Utah State, I came in as an art major. But it didn't take me very long to figure out that, commercial art was going to bring a lot of money in. And so I looked at the roster, but why did I get into business? And then I realized, it dawned on me as I'm looking at the two buildings sitting next to it, it was the closest building to our dorm. So, in those cold, winter days, it's just an easy little jaunt across, the hallway to get to the business building. That's not really true, but it sounds good. Now, I played 10 years for the NFL. I also started my own business and ran it for 8 years. And then also worked in television for 5 years. And then got into the academia side of it, working with the University of Michigan Depression Center. Did some nonprofit work in between those times, and then ended up with the University of Michigan, which I hold currently today with the Depression Center. And so I've had kind of a broad range of things that I've done, but I'm going to kind of go through each one and give you a few tidbits along the way of some of the stuff that I've picked up that was very helpful to me. And one of the things is analogies work really well with me because they paint pictures as far as what's going on. And I'm going to use some sports analogies, football in particular, because I think sports kind of is a microcosm of what is going on in the community and business world. It really is, because you'll both have leaderships, okay? You have leaders. You got a coach, you got the athletic director, you got a coach, you've got the assistant coaches, the quarterback. So you got a structure that's there. Then you got the players. And you also have customers, which is, in this case, the fans. But you have the same thing in communities as well. You've got the mayor, you've got the council, and then it goes down into all the departments that have to service and give community the welfare that they need. Okay, take care of the community. But in business, you have the same thing. You've got a CEO, then you go to the president, vice president, and you've got different divisions that come away from that actually have to manage the stuff to drive a profit. So you've got a common goal, you've got the leadership, you have customers, and you also have coordination. Coordination amongst all the departments, because it doesn't work if you're there by yourself and trying to run stuff. You've got to have coordination between the departments. Even if you take a community, for example, and something happens, the fire shows up, the firemen show up, the police show up, you have to have coordination what's going on. Coordination of services has to be there. The mayor has to be able to get along with the city council in order to get things done. Business the same way. You've got to have coordination between the president down to the vice president, down to the accounting department, down to the sales department. What are you going to do? How's it going to be done? And manage that material and manage that that data and stuff to make sure that you drive and get the product to the customer, and he's happy, so you derive a profit. So you have all that stuff. It's just the same thing in football. Now, I was able to play 10 years, and I'm going to kind of tell you how it is. Okay, I got drafted, and when you go, you show up, and first thing you find out is, wow, I didn't know near what I thought I knew. And you're not the big fish in a small pond anymore. You get there, and all of a sudden, you're a little fish in a huge pond. And not only that, everything's so much faster. It's not going to be different when you guys leave and you go out into the world. Things are going to happen really fast. They'll come crashing. It's almost like a train wreck. I'll never forget taking the first snap, and it was like, hit, and I got it, and just like, wham, man. It was like crazy. And I go, oh. And I was able to develop through that, but I'm going to tell you kind of how it is, okay? And it'll be a little bit like, we've all had this common experience. And it's going to be like this, too, when you guys get out into your respective jobs and what you plan on doing. But we've all had this experience, so kind of bear with me for a second, because none of us probably remember being a baby, when we started to grow up. But we all had the same experience, so follow me. Okay, you're a baby, and what happens when the first time you start to roll over, what happens? The people around you go, oh, did you see that? Oh, look it. They're all excited, okay? And then all of a sudden, as a baby, you kind of get up and you start crawling. Oh, look at, come on, crawl over here, and you got all this encouragement. People are clapping for you, and they're cheering you on. They want you to do well. And then sooner or later, you might stand up, and the first time you stand up, and you're on your own, and you got the parents, you got everybody there. Oh yeah, look, did you see that? I saw it first. They're all excited about you'll be able to stand up. And then you start taking your first step, and they're across the room. Come on, walk to daddy, come on. He took 2 steps. He came to me first, And so you're battling back and forth, and you get all that encouragement as far as walking. And then what happens? Okay, you get to a certain age, and all of a sudden you're walking on your own. Okay, and wow, this is great. You're walking on your own. Do you need encouragement at that point in time? Do you just need to do all those claps and everybody encourage you to come on and walk around? No, because you know why? Because once you figure out you can walk and you can move around, you're on your own, man. You're going places that you never thought about. These are new adventures now. You're going this way and you're going that way. And you're out moving around. In fact, instead of people going, come on, they're going, wait, come back. They're trying to get their hands on you. Don't go over there. And so it just becomes different. But that's the experience that you have. Is all of a sudden, once you figure something out and that light goes on, wow, I can move around. Now you're free to explore. You're free to imagine. You're free to, just dive in. And so it was when I went to Detroit Lions. I remember getting there, and things moved so fast. It was so difficult. And looking at it. And every time you get a snap, and every time you did something, you turn around and look at the coach, waiting to see if it was good or bad. We'd go watch films afterwards, and you get analyzed. okay, here's what you did wrong here. So you're learning, constantly learning, constantly learning. So the whole first year was a constant learning experience. And little by little, you start getting a little bit better at it. And then sooner or later, you know, you get a chance where you're actually up on your own, you're standing. And I got the phone call to start against the Monday night game, my first start against the Detroit Lions, and pow, we had a great game plan. But more than that, I was ready to go. And we ended up winning the game, I think it was 48-17, threw for 4 touchdown passes, ran for 2, and obviously we won the game. But it was just one of those breakout games, and it was great. In fact, my jersey is now in the Hall of Fame. I'm not. My jersey is, though, because it was deemed one of the best debuts in Monday night history. So yay for that. But it was from that point forward, man, I was up and I was running, I was going. And so, you know, when I look at it, and then, you know, I played 10 years, and I knew who my customers were. Like I said, you know, the fans are great. I must say this, though. After 10 years, when I started going into business, and I was not sure what I was going to do. In fact, I asked upstairs when we were sitting down, you know, we were talking about a business plan. I guess they're in one of the, what you call it? Yeah, summer programs of going out and starting your own business and stuff and being an entrepreneur. Where does that come from? And I asked, how do they know what business to get into? Well, you kind of look around. I was in the same way. When I finished after 10 years of playing football, I'm looking at what do I want to get into? Now, this is where all this experience I learned here all of a sudden started catching up to me and said, oh, okay. So I looked around, and it turned out that I was doing 2 things at the same time. I was working for a tax relief firm, which is a commercial firm, which we actually would go into these large corporations, and you look and you get their SEV, you know, their state equalized value, and you check out what equipment they're using or not using, and then you figure it all out, and then you come back and say, okay, I can save you X amount of dollars off your tax savings, and we'd keep half. So that's one thing I was doing. And at the same time, there was an opening that popped up that working with car dealers. General Electric got into the business of extended warranties and credit life and disability in the insurance industry. I knew nothing about that. I really didn't know anything about the other business either. But that was a little bit easier. But I knew nothing about that. And so here I got an opportunity to get into this. And so I had 2 guys that came in. They took the, filed for the agency. We got the agency. And they were supposed to help me out and train me. In fact, one was a former football player from here, and one was a guy that lived in Virginia. So they came in, they're going to train me. So the first day we go out for training, we go to Illinois, and we're going to go out. Well, they walked into their home base and found out that their business suddenly ceased to exist. And so they're panicking, and they're going out, and now I'm on my own. So now I've got this business. I've already got the agency. I just got my license. I had to go through and get my, what do I do with it? I don't know anything about the car business. Nothing at all. So I went down, and I started learning from the inside out, because that's one thing you have to learn. One thing you're going to need to know is the what, why, and the who, okay? What is your business, first of all, okay? What is it that you need to do? So I didn't understand the business, so I went and I sit down and I started talking, I started listening to dealerships, I started getting inside and listening to what's going on. So you have to know the language of the business, you have to know what the business can provide, what it can do. And so just listening to the different terminologies, I would sit in you know, for, you know, 9, 10 hours, and just sitting across from an F&I department, finance and insurance department, and listen to them talk to the customers, listen to the lingo that the salesman would talk about. And, you know, when you start talking about car dealerships, there's a kind of a tendency to say, oh, car dealership, oh. Sometimes there's a stigma attached to that, oh, that's just a dealership. Because some of us don't have a very good experience when we go buy cars, right? You can say, okay, I don't know if you guys have experienced it or not, but sometimes it's got kind of a pressure situation. You don't really understand how it's put together. But I'll tell you that a car dealership, they have the sales department, they've got the finance and insurance department, they've got the service department. So they're all run separately as individual businesses that come together. So you got 3 separate businesses under one business that the owner runs. Okay, so understand, so they're a great business model if you want to learn something about how business interacts with each other. So anyway, so from that point, so I learned a little bit about the language. I learned about how the business works, how they transfer it. And so I was able to take that business and grow it from its inception until about 7 years later into a business that I was actually making a lot more money than I did when I played football. And so I felt very good and very secure in being able to do that. But one of the things you had to learn is what goes on, you know, what is happening within your own business? What are the needs? Now, I must say I did have a huge advantage because I could go into anybody at that point in time because I had a little bit of name recognition. I could go into anybody and talk to them. And I thought it was great. But being new, and you guys might experience this at some point in time, and those who are, have ever done sales before will understand what I'm saying. When you go out, there's a little bit of fear, okay? And for those that say to have no fear, guess what? Everybody has fear. And so when you hear somebody say, oh, I have no fear, I don't want to insult anybody, but if you don't have any fear, you're probably stupid, okay? So I don't want to insult anybody, but if you have no fear, you're probably stupid. Everybody has fear, okay? The thing is how you manage that fear. What do you do with it? How do you get around it? So I would just play this little game where I would call up, and I knew they would be gone at lunch. So I'd call up to set an appointment up at lunch. Now, I know the guy's not going to be there. Secretary would answer the phone and say, so is so-and-so there? No, they're gone to lunch. Could you leave a message for me? And I'd tell them my name, and they'd write it down, because I knew when the guy got back in, they're going to get that message, and the guy's going to look at it. Now, if I would have called him and talked directly, he probably wouldn't catch. But him sitting it and staring at the name for a while, I knew it was going to resonate for a little while, and he's going to realize, oh, yeah, this was the quarterback. So I knew I had that name recognition. And so I used the opportunity to get to him that way. So that worked really well for me, was the idea of, like, how do you use the name the best? Okay. But then when I got in front of him, you had to know what you're talking about. You only got one shot. And if you don't know what you're talking about, if you don't know your business, you're going to be gone. They're going to have a nice time talking to you, and you're going to be gone. And that's it. You had your chance, and it's gone now. So anyway, so that's kind of how I manipulated that situation, is, to get best in. Then once I got in, I had to find out, okay, what, okay? What is it, what's the best way to handle, who's my competition? So who is the competition you're fighting against? Competition can be what they do, how they do it well, what the customer has now, or what the person has now, how you can beat your competition. What project can you do to beat the competition? Okay, so understand your competition as well when you go into it. What is it you're gonna have to compete against? And then, how do you compete against it? What is it that you do that is better than them, and how do you put that in place? And that's where we found some nice niches and stuff that was different from our competitor. And also, I understand how the dealership worked, and I understand who I needed to talk to. Each one was a little bit different than the other. And you're going to find that each business sometimes is different than the other. A lot of different models and stuff that are out there. So you have to understand how to involve that. So that was kind of my summation as far as of going and starting into business. And like I said, I ran the business up. And those are some of the steps that went through to tackle those things as well. One thing also, when I'm talking about challenge yourself, don't be afraid. Like I said, the fear thing, don't be afraid to go out and challenge yourself. Do many things. When I was in the off seasons, the 10 years that I was there, I knew I was going to have to work afterwards. And so what I ended up doing is I worked as a heat treat, for a heat treating company as a salesperson. I also worked for an advertising company just to get as much information as I could. Started understanding how ads were written, started producing a few of those programs and getting them out there. And then I also worked for Channel 7, which is an enlightening experience. When I worked for Channel 7, I worked with a guy named John Gross. He worked for the NFL Films, also worked for the local channel station. And he would take me out and he would show me how to produce these little pieces. So you go out and you put out like you maybe take, half hour's worth of film and you have to condense that into a 2-minute story. So you come back and edit them down and put it down. I thought this was great. It was really fun. It's TV, it's the whole thing. And I remember they asked me back one time, and they asked me, go out and do a live shot. And I thought, live shot? Okay. What's involved in a live shot? And when I talk about being prepared, this is where I'm talking about. They said, oh, it's really easy. You go out and you just grab an interview and you talk to them, and you come back. You don't have any editing, so it's really easy. Okay, great. Now, I've never done a live shot before, okay? So I went out, and it was the high school championship basketball games. I know nothing about basketball, first of all, knew nothing about the high school championships, but I went out to the site. I was mic'd up, had the little IFB in your ear, and I grabbed somebody I was going to talk to, and as I'm talking to him, I can hear the guy say, 20 seconds in my ear. So, okay, 20 seconds. Okay, here's what I'm going to tell you, and here's what we're going to talk about. And all of a sudden, this guy says, when's this going to be on the air? I said, well, we're going live. It's going to be on now. And all of a sudden, his face kind of got pale. His eyes got kind of big. And he goes, I can't do this. And he walked away. And I went, oh. Now I hear 5 seconds, 4 seconds. Camera comes on. Hi, Eric Hipple, live from Canton Hall. Da, 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 da. I talked about 10 seconds and realized I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay. So I tried to steal about another 5. I had 2 minutes to fill. Tried to steal about another 5, 10 seconds, and I was rambling. They started talking to me in the ear, and I blocked them out because I don't want to, I'm trying to think right now, man, and this guy's trying to talk in my ear, right? So I put them out. So finally I thought, wow, what a brilliant idea. I'll check on the game. All right, so I turned and I said, let's see how the game's doing. And I turned and I said, oh, great, it's a 0-0 tie. The game hadn't started yet. They're out warming up on the thing. And so here they are warming up with the coach talking to him, and everything else right behind me, and I'm going, it's a 0-0 tie. Anyway, so the light finally dims down. They turn the light off, and I'm standing there in front, and the light goes off. And before that happened, I'm sitting there, and I'm in a full-blown panic, and I block these guys out. I can hear them yelling at me. And so finally I thought, after that, I better listen to them. And what they're yelling to me is, throw it back to the station. Throw it back to the station. Oh, they were yelling at the whole time in my ear. I finally said, oh, and back to you, Joe, at the stadium, at the station. And as soon as that happened, the light went out, and I looked, and both the cameraman and the sound guy were just bent over, just laughing. They're having a good time. They're just going, oh, man. Oh, Eric, we're so sorry. We pulled back as far as we could, but, man, there's still panic written all over your face, So I went, oh. So I went back to the station, and I said, why didn't you tell me what to do? And he said, you didn't ask. We didn't, hey. And so be prepared, okay? Understand what you're doing and be prepared because that's a huge part. Even the unthinkable. Think about the unthinkable sometimes. Think outside the box. All the things that could possibly happen. This is also was also a big play, and I'm going to backtrack a little bit when I talk about that, as being prepared, is on the first game that I played in, that Monday night game. I told you how structured it was and how you learn everything. But it was also the coach had a really good game plan. We had the team that would send in by substitution. You could see what they're sending in. And by doing that, we had a wristband that said, we only had 3 plays, only 3 plays for every defense. That's it. So they'd send this defense in. I'd look, okay, we'll run this play. Boom, boom. All of a sudden they get burnt. They take that defense out, and they run another defense in. I go to the next play. Heck, okay, burn. We burn that defense, send another defense in. They kept doing this. If they knew, we were so well prepared for every defense, but if they knew what we were doing, all they had to do was play one defense for the whole game. We only had 3 plays for it. It would have been a nightmare. And so I protected that wristband like you wouldn't believe. So when I got knocked down, I was afraid they're going to strip the wristband and take it off to the sidelines and go, look at this. So anyway, being prepared really helps out. It turned out, like I said, to be the greatest game that I ever played in. And also in business, kind of set me along when you learned about the Channel 7, kind of like being prepared would have helped me out a little bit in that. And then, let's see, then I also, for Channel 7, I also worked with, eventually got into the pregame show that I worked with, and then my own business, the Hipple & Associates, the insurance side, that I grew to after that. Another aspect of having, like I said, I went for 7 years. The business was doing extremely well. One thing I wasn't aware of that could happen, because it's just a meteor rise in that business. We're doing $1.1 million in commissions, and it was great. But we grew really fast, and so I kept adding stuff and growing it. I wasn't thinking about sustainability at all. I wasn't thinking about long term, what to do, how to put assets away and store them. What I was thinking was growth, 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 growth. And so as that was growing up, what happened was General Electric came to the point where also they grew so fast in this particular niche of business, they put a freeze on it, and they brought in somebody to analyze their risk. So they wanted to find out how risky they were and what their in their insurance side of it. And so when they did that, they put a freeze on it, I had like 80% of my business that was placed with them, and it froze me out. And so I scrambled really fast to try and get other business to pick up the slack. And it didn't really catch. In other words, you go from doing $100,000 a month down to doing $10,000 a month. It's a huge difference. And so I wasn't able to scramble fast enough. I wasn't prepared. So in that scramble, I ended up moving my business to a competitor and sold that off to a competitor. And that's when I started working with the Fox from 1999 to 2000. So I moved that off to him. And that still, believe it or not, still is producing income even today. Not much. It's down, especially after what's happened in the economy with the car dealers and stuff that taking away some of the licenses from the car dealers and the car business that really slowed down, that all of a sudden it became a lot less than it was, but it's still got income coming in today, just from that. So if you do things right and you set it up, it can be an advantage. But I wasn't able to sustain the constant income and the growth that I had in the meteor rise. I wasn't prepared for it. So make sure that you prepare yourself. And the other thing is, I guess I want to talk about is not giving up. Getting knocked down and getting back up is one thing. Physically you can do that. I was able to do that a lot, and many, many times over and over again. But mentally, sometimes it's a really tough thing to do, to get yourself back up once you've been knocked down. And also you're not able to see where you're going to get hit from sometimes, or you're not going to see what life throws at you sometimes. Are you prepared for it or not? But I will say this: don't ever give up. There's an experiment that I do. I'm not going to do it full-fledged. In fact, I'll just walk through it. Here, can I borrow you for a second? Come here. I don't have a blindfold on me, but if I did, okay, I would blindfold him and I would say this, and I'd turn him around. So you got a blindfold on, I'm going to turn you around a bunch of times, okay? All right? Okay, there's only one door, okay? And it's the door we walked in over here. It's the left door. There's only one door, okay? Turn you around again. Now I'm going to say, okay. Now, if I were to tell him to find that door, okay, find the door. Now, pretend you're blindfolded. You don't really have to do it. I'm just going to use you, okay? But if I were to say, find that door, he might walk over here and bump against this. He might walk over here and bump here. He might go over here and bump against this. Might try over there. He's walking around in the dark trying to find that one door that's over there. And he hits against it, and he goes over here. Guess what? Eventually, he's going to find that door, right? Eventually. Maybe a year from now, he's going to find that door. But eventually, he's going to find the door if you don't starve to death first. But some people might find it right away. But some people also, between that, they might all of a sudden say, I can't find the door, and they might give up. And my thing is, why give up? Okay? As you bounced around and you can't find your way, why did you give up? Well, I was tired, okay? I wasn't mentally ready to do it. It was too tough. It was difficult. I couldn't find. There's a whole bunch of reasons why that are out there why people would give up. My question is, why give up, though? Because that's the door. If you're facing a position that there's a door that there's a way out, don't give up. Just keep trying at it. Now, I will also say this also. Be aware of who your support system is. When you go into business, and I'll even use this in football, when I went back into training camp and I went in, surround yourself with people, okay, that can give you positive reinforcement. Don't find the negative person, because our thoughts tend to dwell and follow on what we're surrounding ourselves with. So if we're getting a lot of negative impact, a lot of negative feedback, we will start thinking negative. We will start defeating ourselves. So surround yourself with support people that can help you. Certainly when, and I'm going to use football again, but going into a situation where everybody's got their own specific job to do, but the common goal is, I'll let you go in a minute. Okay, stay here. The common goal is to win. Everybody does their own little different thing, but it's the support issues that we get, the people you surround yourself with and how you pump each other up in order to make that work. So as he stands here, okay, and I spin him around again, and I say, okay, now find the door. If we were all to go outside that door and stand over there and say, hey, it's over here, the door's over here, do you think you'd find the door a lot faster? Yeah, he might just turn and walk right to it. Okay, now you can sit down. Okay, and you found the door. Good job, man. So surround yourself with the support people that can support you back. And if you talk about business and talk about leadership, you could even flip that scenario to say all of us have blindfolds on, and let's take the person who's going to be leading us, okay? And if I were to tell everybody that has blindfolds on, find your way out the door, it's going to be mass confusion, isn't it? Everybody's going to be bouncing around and bumping into each other, not going to find their way out. They got the blindfolds on, they're blind, they're bumping into people. But if the leader were to walk over there and stand by that door and say, hey, door's over here, guys, every one of us would start, going for the right direction. Now, we still might bump into each other, but at least we're going in the right direction. We're all going the same way. And we'll all finally get outside that door and head the right way, even though we kind of shuffle around a little bit. And so as a leader, you got to be able to be that person that stands at the door and call people to you. That's how you manage. That's how you pull people to. Lending hands, giving support, but also receiving it, but guiding them in the right direction. So it's a two-way street. One is an individual. You want to have support around you. You don't want to be surrounded by negative. You want to be around positive. As a leader, the same thing. You want to be able to be that positive influence that reaches out and pulls people towards you. Now, I've been involved in a lot of different situations that, that were negative, but also a lot of positive situations. Going from California to Utah State University was a big jump for me. You know, I came from a really small high school, came here, and even though the university wasn't near what it is today, it was a lot smaller then, but it still gave me the kind of the structure and the foundation and stuff that I needed, okay, to succeed. We had a good football team, okay, we had good coaching, we had good structure, had a good college, university experience. And then learning about business, going to classes, learning the things that happen, and learning about putting those things in place so when you leave, you have something positive to look forward to. That's your base, that's your ground. But once you get out there, just like the person who's learned how to walk, you're free. You know, you're out there and you're trying to find things to do. And you'll find them. They'll be there. But remember about the people that you have to surround yourself with support-wise. Because every situation that I've been into that's been tough to overcome, I can tell you it's a person who's reached in and grabbed me and helped me out. And I also have had the ability to reach out and ask for help. That's one thing we have to dispel is the fact that, you know, the stigma of asking somebody to help out somewhere along the line. There are people out there that you wouldn't believe that'll bend over and help you work out. But you have to surround yourself with the right people. You have to surround yourself with the people that care. You have to surround yourself with the people that have an invested interest and want to see you win. And so those are the people you want to be around. There's a tendency, and I used to see this a lot, when a new rookie would come into camp. He'd come into camp, and if he had a bad day or something, you would find him sitting at the table, like in the lunchtime or dinner time, sitting at the table with the other guys that were bitching. And the reason he was sitting there is because he was bitching. And he wanted to sit around the people that, yeah, it's not my fault, it's their fault. Yeah, he never got me a chance. Yeah, he never called my number to come in and play. Yeah, I sit through the whole scrimmage and never got a chance to sit in. I never got a chance to play. And they're bitching. Yeah, this coach doesn't like me. Everything you can possibly think of was the reasons why they weren't being successful. But they surrounded themselves with each other. Where if you looked over at the other tables, these are the guys who are saying, and I don't care if they're playing or not. You might have a rookie over here saying, yeah, so what happens on this play? He never got in either, but he's asking questions. So what happens this? He's trying to learn. He's trying to absorb from these guys. You know, and guys that see that, guess what? They want to share. Yeah, you're going to be okay. Yeah, here's what you do. And they'll encourage him. They'll pick him up. And these are the guys that stay, and unfortunately, these are the guys that go away. And that's just human nature. And it's pervasive not only in the sporting world, but also in the business world, also in general life, in communities, and everything that you do has that same effect to it. So reach out, ask for help. Don't be afraid to take help either. Sometimes we get this prideful thing. No, I can do it on my own. That's good. But none of us can escape stress. And stress can really have a good, stress can have a great effect on you, and we need it for short-term stuff. We have to have stress, but long-term stress is not good for you. So don't beat yourself up and don't punish yourself, okay? Understand how to manage that stress, how to use it, just like you do fear, how to use fear. Reframe it, turn it into something positive. Take all that energy that you've got and release it into something positive. Don't hold it and start working against it. Okay? As I said, I can't think of anything that I've done that there wasn't somebody there to help me up and pick me up when I've had a drop-off, when I've almost failed. But every time I was able to get back up and triumph and turn it into something positive. And so with that, I'm going to leave you, and I'll answer questions after this is over. And I didn't go specifically into a lot of different areas. You guys can ask questions on anything you want to, whether it's business, whether it's football, or personal stuff. That's fine with me. But this was a courtesy of Detroit Lions. Put this little film together, and it kind of encompasses my career, not only in football, but also outside of football. It's just some football clips. But the setup is that things don't always go well for us in life. Sometimes things don't always go well for us on the football field. But with encouragement and stuff, then things do get better. Okay? While we're waiting for that, I'll just tell you a funny story. And I talked about fans. And Detroit Lions fans are actually some of the greatest in the world. but sometimes you just don't know who the fans are and what they're thinking sometimes. I was done playing, and it was like 3 years after I was done playing, and they asked me to come back as an honorary captain. So I'm standing on the sidelines in clothes like this. I'm standing there, I'm watching, and somebody back me behind me in the stands is going, "Hey, Eric, Eric." Now, you learn as a player never to turn around and face the stands, okay? Especially if somebody's calling your name. But I'm not playing anymore, so I'm standing there, and this guy keeps going on, "Hey, Eric," and he keeps yelling at me. So after, about 20 minutes, I figure, this must be somebody I know. So I turn around, and I said, "Yeah." And this guy there goes, "You suck." so beware the fickle fans. Yeah.
I was thinking if we could act out some of the things.
Sure, yeah. Okay, you be the quarterback and I get to hit you. Okay.
No.
We were, Steve and I walked over yesterday, walked over and walked down to the stadium. We're sitting in the stadium as we're talking, and we're up in the stands, and teams, I'm going there. Teams sometimes are kind of worried about people watching their practice because they might, take some notes and use it against them. So somebody came up and walked up there and came walking down our aisle and said, "Is one of you Eric Hipple?" I said, "Yeah." And they go, "Okay, that's all right then." And they walked away. So Steve goes, "Oh, I feel so good. God, he didn't know which one it was. It could have been me." And then I thought about that and I said, "Well, how do you think I felt?" Okay, now we're good. Yeah. You know what? Why he's messing around. It's actually kind of fun to see. Otherwise, I wouldn't care about it, but it's kind of fun. Are there any? Yes, go ahead.
How many concussions did you have?
Wow. And it's funny that you asked that because I'm involved in a couple of those studies where they're looking at TBI, which is traumatic brain injury. And I was out at UCLA for the one they're looking at pituitary gland function, and so they're doing scans and cognitive testing. And I'm going to in New York for a scan, an MRI scan. The NFL is going out and they're trying to get as many people as possible to get to look at the concussion issue. I think I'd say a fair number would be around 12. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Go ahead.
What are do you think that the NFL should players, and do you think that it's true that the NFL is kind of suppressing some of those signs?
The question was, do I think the NFL should take care of some of the guys that do have problems down the road, especially health insurance stuff? I would say I don't think they're expected to, but I would say with the money that they bring off of the game, they certainly have the means to. And then they get into the issue, what should they do and what shouldn't they do? But, it's an early career. You're done at, age 30 or so is usually, I think the average career span right now is 4.5 years. It was 3.5 years when I played, and it cut off at 10. And there are guys that have lingering things. We ran a survey from the University of Michigan. We put a survey out to 3,300 players. 1,500 of them came back and found out about 48% of them show or have issues with pain. So 48% of them have issues with pain right now. And then we looked at quality of life issues and stuff like that. And there's some guys that aren't doing really well at all. I'd say about 13, 14% of them fall into that category of modest to severe depression, which has financial problems, has relationship problems, pain problems, sleep problems. All those things fall in that category. So should they do something? I think they should have some sort of means. Do they have to take care of everybody? No. But they should have something that somebody can at least apply to. Okay.
real tough to handle, and I think you have to kind of go inside yourself and think about it, things prospectively. A lot of times you have to depend on your coaches and your fellow players to kind of pull you through when you're frustrated also, and down at times like this. Just a nice slap on the back and stuff, hang in their hip, and guys give you encouragement. And so I think that's the way you deal with yourself, plus having your teammates, help you through it.
Hipple, From Unknown to Hero, a tale told only in books, in song, and in film.
We've got about 10 more minutes, and then we're going to have to clear out of here. So during that period of time, Eric, I wonder if I could ask you a question.
Sure.
We saw some pretty brutal hits here, but I know that the toughest hit you ever took was when your son Jeff committed suicide.
Correct.
Could you talk a little bit about that and what that did to you and what it took for you to get back up and deal with that issue?
Certainly, the growing up in the world that I grew up in professional sports and college sports, where you always have that team, the surrounding and insulated from a lot of things that come from the outside. But there's also the downside of that is when something doesn't feel right or isn't going on, there's a huge stigma around it where you don't want to ask for help. It's really difficult to do that in a formal way. So what I found was even when I was here, there was one quarter that I slept, just about a whole quarter I couldn't get out of bed. And I ended up taking some summer classes to catch up on them. But I couldn't get up and couldn't get going. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. It was cold outside. I don't know. That's what I thought. But there was a little bit more to it than that. When I was drafted by Detroit Lions during training camp a couple different times, where I had trouble, not sleeping, stress, agitate and stuff like that, and I had trouble dealing with it to the point where sometimes getting out, I just feel like I couldn't perform, but I didn't know what was wrong. Nobody ever, said. I just figured it's part of things, you get over them, who knows what's going on, why you're thinking those things. And then my son started going through those things after I was done playing in the year 2000. He was 15 years old, and he started going through some of these things. All of a sudden, he wasn't feeling well. He was, his sleep was messed up. His appetite was off. He started withdrawing from his friends a little bit. Somatic pains, kind of stomach aches, kind of like flu-like symptoms that he had, but it wasn't the flu. But not knowing anything about it, and I'd gone through some of those things, I looked at him and said, well, that happened to me, but you'll get past it. Come on. Do you want to go to school? Come on, you got to go to school. Procrastinated, when had an event to come up. We'd wait till the last second, So anyway, so all those symptoms were there. And I missed them all, of course. And then when he started getting to the point where he was having some crying spells at nighttime, I'd see him in the morning, and his eyes were a little bit red. So I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know what it was. And so the one morning, on a Saturday morning, I said, Jeff, I don't know what's going on, but I've got to go on this business trip, and I'll call you from there. And so I left, and I was able to, kiss him on the cheek and stuff and took off. And it was the next day I got a phone call from my wife, and she said that Jeff had taken his life. And when she said it, the whole thing just kind of dropped on me, and I kind of fell apart. First of all, from guilt, like, what did I miss? How come I didn't see it? Second of all, I understood it, which really scared me. I understood what he had done, and I go, oh my gosh, he did it. You know, those are some of the feelings, you know, some of the things you have in your own mind that you run through. And so the suicidal ideation is pervasive sometimes, and a lot of us, if we think about it, okay, or we might even test the waters about it. You know, what would it be like, you know, if I wasn't around? Things are just so overburdensome. Things are so overwhelming. It'd be better off if I wasn't around anymore. And that's kind of the feeling that kind of creeps into that suicidal, you know, thinking. I'll tell you guys this, you know, you're the only freshman that's in here, sorry, but 1 out of every 5 high school seniors has contemplated suicide within the previous 12 months. And suicide is the 2nd leading cause of death in college ages. It's also the 3rd leading cause of death in the high school ages. So it's out there, okay? But the ideation, you know, the stress, and you guys at this age level are in a tremendous amount of stress because you're looking at what you have to do. You're trying to make grades, you're trying to get done, you're trying to get graduated. And you're going to turn around and you're going to go out and you know, either going to continue with school or you're going to go out and you're going to look for a job. And so finances and everything else all play into that. But in his case, so I got the phone call that he was dead, that he died. I had to fly back and went to the morgue and just to make sure it was an accident. He had shot himself. And so it's just that whole thing. From that point forward, I kind of fell apart. You know, the business I did let completely go, and the competitor that I sold it to, I went hands off, and he kind of let me have that hands off time for a while. But eventually, I ended up doing a lot of self-medicating, which I really encourage you not to do. Okay, I understand binges, you know, and the college drinking stuff that happens and stuff like that, so it's fine. But if you ever see somebody else that's starting to go on a pattern that's using it to escape, please say something to them. Anyway, I ended up doing 58 days in jail. It was on a Monday, oddly enough, it was on a Monday Night Football. I'd gone to a game, and I was actually with the prosecuting attorney, and I was with the ex-sheriff from the next county. And when we split up and I went back that way, you know, I stayed in the parking lot and just drank a bunch more. And on the way, I got pulled over. And I didn't think that much of it. The judge gave me plenty of opportunities to do stuff about it. You know, the self-help stuff, you know, go to this, go to that. And I didn't care. And it's really hard to relate to him that I just didn't care about anything at that point in time. And so he had no other choice, and he put me to 58 days in jail. About halfway through that jail sentence, I realized, you know what, this is not the legacy that I want. This is not the legacy that I want for my son or anything else. And so then I started like trying to put things together. When I get out, what is it that I can do to understand this better? So when I got out, I did. I went and started educating myself on depression, on mental health issues. I found out, you know, my aunt, you know, suffered from schizophrenia when she was age 16 and she was institutionalized. My mom had depression spells, where she called them her spells, and would stay in her room for, you know, days and stuff like that. So it ran in our family, and yet didn't know it. And so going out and talking and understanding and getting educated became a really big thing for me. And then eventually working into the suicide prevention and stuff, and currently working with the military and stuff, because they've got a pretty good suicide problem going on right now. But it was just that whole, I guess the aha moment when he died, to all of a sudden the point where I finally went and got help and started understanding. I went to a mini medical school that was at the University of Michigan, and that's how I ended up at Michigan, and just on depression alone and stuff. So I encourage you, whatever field you're in, knowledge is a wonderful thing. Knowledge about many things is great. And one of the biggest things to have in business and life is communication. Learn how to communicate to people. You know, I talked yesterday, when I was talking yesterday, I thought a lot about, you know, texting and how we say things to each other, how we're, you know, electronically passing information off all the time, data-wise and stuff. But we lost the art of, like, communicating really well. And people thrive on that type of communication. You know, the human touch, you know, the human communication, as far as I can tell what they're saying by looking at them. You know, I can tell if a person's happy or sad. You know, when I looked at somebody and I talked to them, talk to their eyes, you talk to them, you can see the spark, you can see what they're doing. You know, you get a feel for them, and they get a feel for you. And so by me saying something, you understand what I'm telling you because of my actions and everything else I'm telling you with it. And I used the example yesterday when I was texting to somebody, and I said, oh, nice shirt. Okay, I texted you a nice shirt. What do I mean by that? Am I being like, hey, that's a nice shirt? Or am I going, hey, nice shirt? You know, it's kind of hard to tell by the text that you get. But by talking to somebody, you can tell that. And not only that, there's a certain empathy that we have when we talk with each other and we're able to open up. And one of the biggest things about life, about business, is knowing your customer, being able to talk to them, your coworkers, that cooperation that I talked about, you have to have that, but also with each other, okay, with your friends and stuff like that. Know, how to ask somebody, are you doing all right? And don't be afraid to say, yeah, I'm doing fine, or you know what, no, I've got some things going on. And just that communication is huge. So,
will you join me in thanking Eric? I want to just pick up very briefly on that last comment that Eric made about empathy. I think, you can tell from what Eric's been through that he's got an enormous amount of empathy for young people your age, the challenges and stresses you're going through, and other people as well. And, I heard a saying a long time ago. It goes something like this: only the wounded are invited to serve in the army of the Lord. Eric's been wounded, but he's doing the Lord's work. And we're proud of you, Eric, as a graduate of the Huntsman School of Business.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for being here today. Thank you. Appreciate it.